Sex does not suddenly disappear from a woman's life when she begins to discover herself. What disappears is the belief that sex must constantly prove her worth. This difference is subtle but profound. At first, the change is quiet, almost invisible. A woman who once felt pulled toward attention, desire, and closeness through sex begins to pause. Not because she feels empty, but because she feels full. From the outside, this shift is often misunderstood. People assume something is wrong, that desire has faded, that passion has died. But psychologically, something very different is happening. When self-discovery begins, the inner world reorganizes itself. The psyche starts asking deeper questions, questions that were once avoided through distraction. According to Jungian psychology, when a person begins to become conscious of who they truly are, unconscious patterns lose their grip. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the movement towards psychological wholeness. For many women, sex was never just about pleasure. It was about reassurance, about being chosen, about being seen. Desire became a mirror. If someone wanted her, she felt valuable. If they pulled away, something inside her collapsed. Self-discovery interrupts this pattern. A woman starts to realize that her sense of worth cannot survive on external validation alone. And once this realization appears, sex can no longer carry the same emotional weight. This is where interest begins to change. Not because sex loses meaning, but because it loses its job. Sex was once used to regulate emotions, loneliness, insecurity, fear of abandonment. When these emotions are finally faced rather than avoided, sex is no longer required to soothe them. The psyche no longer chases desire to escape discomfort. It learns how to sit with itself. This is deeply unsettling at first, because without the familiar pull of validation, silence appears. And silence forces awareness. A woman may notice that situations which once excited her now feel neutral. That attention which once felt intoxicating now feels unnecessary. This does not mean she has become disconnected. It means she has become centered. Self-discovery builds an inner anchor. And when that anchor forms, external stimulation loses its urgency. Sex stops being a way to feel alive because she already feels alive. This is not repression, it is integration. The psyche is no longer split between desire and self-respect. They begin to exist together. And this is where true change begins. As self-discovery deepens, the nervous system itself starts to calm. A woman becomes less reactive and more intentional. This has a direct effect on desire. Before self-awareness, sex is often driven by lack, a hunger to be filled, a need to be affirmed. After self-awareness, sex is driven by presence, by choice, by emotional safety. This distinction matters. When desire comes from lack, it feels urgent, almost compulsive. It demands attention. When desire comes from presence, it feels steady, grounded, optional. Many women mistake the loss of urgency for the loss of desire, but urgency is not desire. Urgency is anxiety wearing the mask of passion. Carl Jung spoke extensively about the shadow, the unconscious parts of ourselves shaped by unmet needs and suppressed emotions. When a woman begins to explore her shadow, she starts to recognize which desires are authentic and which are compensations. This recognition is transformative. She may realize that sexual attention once gave her relief, not fulfillment. Relief from feeling unseen, relief from feeling unworthy. Once these wounds are acknowledged, sex no longer needs to carry emotional responsibility. And when sex stops carrying emotional responsibility, its role naturally shifts. Some women experience a temporary withdrawal during this phase, not avoidance, but recalibration.
The psyche is learning a new way of relating without using desire as a coping mechanism. This phase can be confusing for others. Partners may feel rejected, misinterpret her distance, but internally she feels more stable than ever. She is no longer willing to trade intimacy for validation. She is no longer willing to access connection at the cost of her self-respect. This is not coldness, it is clarity. Self-discovery teaches her that intimacy begins long before sex, in emotional presence, in mutual respect, in safety. Without these foundations, sex feels hollow, and the psyche rejects what feels hollow. Her desire becomes selective, not absent, intentional, not reactive. This selectivity is often mistaken for loss, but it is actually protection. Protection of her inner world, protection of her energy, protection of her becoming.
Eventually, something stabilizes inside her. The restlessness fades. The need to be desired softens. A woman who has discovered herself no longer measures her worth through attraction, she measures it through alignment. This changes how she relates to sex completely. She no longer asks, "Do they want me?" She asks, "Does this connection honor who I am now?" Sex is no longer used to prove value. It becomes an expression of truth. Carl Jung believed that wholeness comes from integrating instinct with consciousness, not suppressing desire, not indulging it blindly. A self-aware woman embodies this integration. She does not reject sexuality, she refines it. Sex becomes slower, deeper, more honest, and because it is no longer driven by emptiness, it appears less frequent. But what remains is authentic. She is no longer drawn to intensity without meaning. She seeks resonance instead, and resonance cannot be rushed. This is why some women lose interest in sex after self-discovery, not because they have become disconnected, but because they have become whole. Sex no longer defines them, it complements them. And that quiet transformation is one of the most misunderstood and powerful shifts a woman can experience. As this inner alignment strengthens, a woman begins to notice something unexpected. Her standards rise without effort, not because she is trying to be selective, but because misalignment now feels uncomfortable. Before self-discovery, discomfort was avoided at all costs. Now, discomfort becomes a signal. Sex that once felt exciting may now feel draining. Not wrong, just incomplete. This is the psyche protecting its new balance. When a woman has spent time alone with herself, she becomes sensitive to energy, to intention, to emotional honesty. She can feel when someone is present and when they are performing. She can feel when desire is mutual and when it is transactional. This awareness cannot be undone. Carl Jung believed that once something becomes conscious, it no longer controls us from the shadows. A woman who has discovered herself cannot unknow what she knows. She recognizes when sex is being offered without depth, without respect, without emotional grounding. And instead of forcing desire, she listens to herself. This is where many women experience a phase of stillness, not emptiness, stillness. They are no longer chasing, they are no longer proving, they are simply being. And in that stillness, desire recalibrates. Sex is no longer about intensity, it becomes about meaning, and meaning takes time.
At this stage, loneliness may appear differently, not as panic, but as space. Before, loneliness demanded immediate relief. Now it invites reflection. A woman who knows herself no longer fills silence with bodies. She listens to what the silence is saying. This is not isolation, it is integration. She learns the difference between wanting connection and avoiding herself. Sex, when used to avoid inner dialogue, loses its appeal because she is no longer running. She has learned how to stay. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of self-discovery. People assume confidence makes a woman more sexually driven. In reality, it makes her more discerning. Confidence removes desperation, and desperation is often mistaken for passion. When desperation fades, desire becomes calm. She no longer feels pulled toward people who cannot meet her emotionally, not because they are bad, but because they are incompatible. And incompatibility no longer excites her. Sex without emotional reciprocity now feels like noise, and her psyche craves coherence. This is why interest seems to decline, because chaos no longer feels familiar.
Eventually, a deeper truth emerges. A woman realizes that her sexual energy is not separate from her life force. It is the same energy, just expressed differently. When this energy was scattered, sex felt urgent. Now that it is integrated, sex feels intentional. Carl Jung viewed libido not only as sexual energy, but as psychic energy, the force that moves a person toward meaning. When a woman directs his energy toward purpose, creativity, and self-trust, her relationship with sex transforms. She does not lose desire, she redistributes it. Some of it moves into her work, some into her inner growth, some into her boundaries. Sex is no longer the primary outlet. It becomes one expression among many. This is why her interest may appear lower, because her energy is no longer concentrated in one place. She has become multidimensional. And multidimensional desire is quieter but deeper.
In the final stage of this transformation, something profound settles in. A woman feels complete, even in desire. She no longer waits for sex to validate her existence. She chooses it when it aligns with her truth. Sex becomes sacred in its own way, not dramatic, not performative, but honest. She does not use it to escape herself. She uses it to express herself. And because expression requires safety, respect, and presence, she chooses carefully. This is why some women lose interest in sex after self-discovery, not because they have become disconnected, but because they have become integrated. What once felt urgent now feels optional. What once felt necessary now feels intentional. Sex is no longer a question. It is an answer that only appears when the connection is real. And that quiet power is the true outcome of self-discovery.